Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 2023 regular monthly meeting of the City of Revere's Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. My name is Joe Gravelisi, and I serve as the chair of the Trust Fund Board at the appointment of now Mayor Patrick Keefe, who I think we all would like to give a warm welcome to and thank him for his service in the early days of his administration. I'm going to begin with a roll call. We have folks that are here both in person and virtually, so myself present. Joanne McKenna, who's now ex officio as City Council President, is not present. Jan Dumas.
Present.
Layla Petri is not here right now. I know that she said she's on her way. Deb Frank is not here. Nanayo is here. And Claire.
Here.
And Dean Harris. Present. Terrific. So we have a few items on the agenda that I'm really excited about, and some are internal things for us to discuss, and some involve some external guests. So I'll start with just a brief update from my seat of things that I've been working on, seeing, and hopefully bringing to fruition here. So as we all know, and as we've been discussing from the beginning, we've been exploring different potential funding sources for how we're going to do our work. Obviously, we have some of the support that we received up front through the mayor and the city council. We've been exploring opportunities through private partners, through MGH, through state programs, and I think we're going to hear a little bit from the city tonight about some state programs that we might be able to apply for, as well as nonprofit partners. So I think the scope remains wide of what we're looking at, and we've had some great conversations over the last month about where we might fall in to different funding opportunities. Obviously, we're really honing in on this first-time home buyer assistance program, or excuse me, the Affordable Home Ownership Opportunity Program, potentially in partnership with Habitat as like a big first priority. I think we've also, in my conversations, both with members and with the city and public, first-time home buyer assistance program to augment what the state does is also something that is on the radar as something that we could potentially fund or get funding for. And we've also, and I know we've talked about this in past meetings, talked about assistance for seniors aging in place, as well as emergency rental assistance. So those still continue to be the four things that I'm having conversations about with legislators and staff, with city staff, with other board members, advocacy groups, nonprofits, etc. So that's kind of what's happening from my seat, and I think it'll be helpful to throw it around a bit. I do want to first swing it over to Anayo just for the treasurer's update on where we're at financially.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, rather. Okay, so this is a check for the current balance for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee. This is, again, from Miguel Orellana. Forgive me if I misspelled that name properly. The current balance is $184,783. This remains unchanged from the previous balance statement announcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I know that we're waiting for James to arrive from Habitat, and he was supposed to be the next item on the agenda. While we await his arrival, I think we'll go ahead to the city updates. I know that Lorena's here, and so I know that she had some updates to share on funding opportunities, some planning and development updates, and I'm sure plenty of other things that you may have on your mind as well. So take it away.
We cannot hear her.
I'm sorry.
I should have noticed that. Thank you for flagging it. Mm-hmm.
Hi, for those who you're seeing my face for the first time. My name is Lorena Escalera. I'm the new Community Development Planner for the Department of Planning and Community Development. And the first items and updates that I'll discuss are the potential funding opportunities for homeowner and rental rehab programs. The first is home ARP funding that will be administered by the North Suburban Consortium. Tom and I this morning attended the
I
monthly,
apologize. So if you could just clarify for folks what the North Suburban Consortium is, just for those that might not be aware. So,
sure, so it is a consortium of 8 communities composing of Winthrop, Medford, Malden, Everett, Melrose, and another one that I'm forgetting. But they are administer home funds from the Housing and Urban Development HUD department, and as well as home ARP funds. So during the monthly board meeting this morning that Tom and I attended, they stated their proposals for a rental development properties request for proposals, and the goals of how they plan to utilize home ARP funds is mainly for homelessness prevention and permanent housing stability through development projects solely. I've talked to James, exchanged an email with him, and it looks like this will not be suitable for Habitat project. However, there is the Gateway Housing Rehab Program that seems to be better suited for a project that's directly focused on smaller home ownership rehab projects. And the Gateway Housing Rehab Program is administered by Mass Housing. It's designed for home ownership or rental properties located in a gateway city as defined by DHCD, which Revere is included on this list of gateway cities. This program is limited to 1 to 4 unit residential buildings. Each eligible affordability restricted unit is eligible to receive up to $125,000 in grant assistance for the following list of eligible projects: for the rehabilitation of unoccupied residential properties for home ownership opportunities, for rehabilitation of occupied or vacant rental properties, redevelopment of suitable non-residential buildings for residential use, and owner-occupied rehab programs. So in the prior iteration of the rehab program was administered by DHCD, and there's been several changes to the administrative requirements to make it more administratively convenient for municipalities to apply and provide the monitoring requirements tied to this program. There's a 15-year annual monitoring commitment that's tied to running this program. And I've spoken to Beverly Estes Margesi, who is the neighborhood stabilization manager, and we've discussed ways of lifting the administrative burden. And one thing that she pointed out, which I think is really helpful, is for me and Tom to reach out to other neighboring communities and see if there is an interest in forming a mini consortium to pool funding and just create a better capacity to administrate the program. Do you have any questions so far about that?
yeah, I have a couple. So do you know, like, how much of this funding is made available? Is there a certain amount, or is just any project that meets guidelines? And is it like a rolling process, or is there a time of year that they do this?
This is a rolling basis. There's no deadline. Based on my conversation with Beverly, their standard cap for right now is helping each municipality for about 2 to 3 homes or 6 to 8 units. And they will be receiving a new allotment of funding for the new fiscal year in July.
So this is Anaya Aswiki. I've got another question. This is an exciting program. I'm actually looking up now, this Gateway Housing Program. Have you guys started the application process, or would you want to form some sort of exploratory committee? I'd definitely like to be involved, where we would kind of draft proposals of how to apply to it, because from what I'm reading on the website, it has a rolling application window, and they even have workshops to help with applications, and this is unfortunately, we missed the March 8. But yeah, essentially the question is, is there already an effort to start applying for these funds? And if so, can we get involved?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Will be connecting with a resident who is requesting homeownership rehab assistance. But for these smaller projects, the city has to apply. But let's say a nonprofit developer or another, I think it's a public housing authority, may be able to apply for larger rehab projects. And I think that's all open up to question if you want to form a committee to explore so the application process is on a case-by-case basis. So we're not really applying for a program budget for let's say we're gonna serve this amount of projects this year. It's basically just on a project-by-project basis.
Got it. So like, say we identified a property that we were gonna use the Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget to purchase and rehab. At that point is when we could apply to get 125,000 toward, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, but even to that point,
Yeah.
we can start that process. Let's say we form an exploratory committee, scour the city for homes that can fit the criteria, what they're looking for, and then go ahead and start. What I mean, like, that's part of what I mean as far as starting the effort. Not simply just like writing the application, but finding residents that need it, finding homes that would apply for it, because I'm excited to get started with any of these additional funding opportunities. So that's what I mean really by exploratory committee, just go through it.
And I think that that's kind of self-directed by us as to how we want to do that, not so much, so really, part of what we're gonna hash out, I think, as a committee, as a board, and part of what we're gonna have conversation with James about from Habitat, is we have options as to how we want to pursue using the funds to acquire properties for the purposes of this program, all right? We could attempt to work with the city on tax title properties, which I think is something we definitely want to explore. We can just attempt to buy something at the market rate. I think that, frankly, the reality is that the $800,000 that we have with the market as it is doesn't leave a ton of wiggle room, so I'd want to make sure that we'd secure more funding before we got into that business. Or we could look at partnering with a nonprofit, or the funding opportunities that we get in advance. So I think that we have options, and I think that's something that you're on the right track of, of how you're thinking about it, is how are we gonna, source these properties.
One last thing on this point. Actually, sort of part of preparing for this meeting and just conversation like this, I actually have been looking at Redfin and properties, and there was one that I identified pretty close to Revere Street. And I'll give you the details more of it later, but it had an asking price of $285,000. I looked at it, and there was a lot of need for repair. That would definitely satisfy. It might even, again, I'm not a carpenter or I'm not a professional in this regard, but properties like that, that's still on the market, would, I imagine, fit this.
Totally, and that's where we could leverage these types of opportunities and partnership opportunities to try to, do those repairs and also make it something that's attainable and affordable for a moderate, low to moderate income family in the area. So sorry for hijacking your updates, Lorena, but I think these.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I get really passionate about these things. I want to get started, and I think this seems like an opportunity to sort of like explore more. And thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. Those are excellent suggestions, Anayo, and especially that there's a huge gap in service in the North Shore. None of our communities are running a homeowner rehab program, so I think that it also is a great way to connect with others and see if we can form a mini consortium.
Did you have some other items or updates from
I
planning?
do,
Yep.
but I'm not, do you want me to finish it? Okay. Now that you mentioned tax title properties, Tom and I are still examining suitable city-owned parcel land. We are circling back on that and expanding our search to include city properties that are still in the court system to be handed to us eventually. only because the current city-owned properties, their locations were remote and not as desirable. So we're hoping that with this expanded search, we'll have a better list for you to share with you next month. And then for the housing production update, we've tentatively selected a firm who will be helping us produce a housing production plan and the action plan for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The firm is called J.M. Goldson, and I'm aware that they've done housing production plans for Salem and Medford. Their proposed plan of services and timeline, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but just an overview is that the entire project, the two pieces of the project, the HPP and the action plan, will span 8 to 9 months from July 2023 to March 2024. And in their proposal, they have that the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan will start around January 2024, so towards the end, to be able to hold the meetings and present the draft action plan to you all. And then other than that, I think just with the Section 3A MBTA compliance testing, we are doing the modeling this week and next week. And we'll have a definitive response to the board of whether we do or do not comply.
Jan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back and ask what you meant by desirable. Are you talking about properties that are, too damaged, too far beyond repair, or are you talking properties that are just too bad a location, or what exactly do you mean by desirable?
Meaning that they're close to transit and that the parcel is large enough to construct.
All right.
Yeah, and I appreciate that thought, going into location, because I think obviously when we think about how to best serve, low to moderate income home ownership opportunities, I think access to jobs, access to transit, access to services. Obviously, A, is going to be helpful to set folks up for success, but then also B, makes sense in the broader sort of like infrastructure of the city and, making sure that we're fitting in with goals in that sense. So thank you for asking about that, Jan. I think that was helpful clarification. So any other either updates from your end or
I
questions?
do have one quick question about the housing production plan. You mentioned January 24th will be the start. Is this change the timeline that Tom prepared? He gave us a projection of like events, and one of those was basically like these sort of collaborative meetings. Has that timeline changed, or is this part of it as well?
I think in terms of what I know, this was what the vendor proposed in their timeline. I think there's can be an open discussion to having you all collaborate through maybe the community engagement process and the draft plan working group meetings.
Thank you.
Anything else for Lorena? No? Anyone online? No? Okay, well, thank you for the updates. It's much appreciated,
you.
and it's great to have you here, and we are enjoying working with you. James, it's good to see you in person. I feel like we've met several times on Zoom. We'll let you introduce yourself. Yeah. Mike, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How's that work? Good.
Perfect.
I was
If you could just
saying,
introduce yourself. And,
I'm Jim Costaris. I'm the president and CEO of Habitat for Humanity Greater Boston, and I'm very pleased to be here this evening.
So Jim, I think what would be helpful is a few things. I think if you could maybe summarize, we've had a couple conversations.
Sure.
Separately, if you could just summarize a little bit about that and the programs that you've done.
Sure.
And then we can maybe get into like more brass tacks of like
Okay.
what it might look like in Revere.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Habitat for Humanity, I'll explain the model. I think some people are familiar with it, but I'll go into a little bit of detail. Our mission is to build homes and create home ownership opportunities for low-income families. We accomplish that through the generosity of donors. We rely on philanthropy. In fact, to date, in Boston, we have actually not received subsidies from city or state or federal government. We've relied entirely on generous donors. We also rely on volunteers. This is the model I think people think of when they think of Habitat. Up to 70% of our labor is volunteer labor. And that's important because that brings down the cost of construction to make these homes much more affordable to low-income families. So let me tell you about the families, because we build homes, but we're about families, and we believe home ownership is a way to break the cycle of poverty because it brings stability to families, and we know that through our research. We know the benefits that come with that. So that's our mission. Again, to repeat myself, we invite families to apply for homes before we actually start construction. They have to meet certain requirements. They have to be below a certain income level. You're probably familiar with the term AMI, Area Median Income. So they have to be below 80% AMI. We go down, we're making an attempt to go down to 40% AMI. The average family is probably about 60% AMI. They have to submit as part of their application pay stubs, tax returns, financial statements. We do a credit history. They need to be able to pay a modest, affordable monthly mortgage. In other words, they need a job. It might be a low-wage job, but they do need a job. They have to agree to work 300 hours on the construction site along with our construction team and volunteers. 300 hours is a lot. These are people who are often, working 60 hours a week in jobs to bring, to raise a family and put food on the table. Yet they still find time to come and help build the home that they will live in. They have to agree to attend a 12-class home ownership course that we teach. It's a comprehensive course. We cover everything from household budgeting to mortgages to home maintenance. Somebody should have made my wife and I, me and my wife should have been required to go through a home ownership course. I would argue that our families, we considered a partnership, are better prepared to be homeowners than the average, homeowner of any income level. They've built their own homes. I mean, how many people can say they live in a home they built? They've gone through this class. An interesting, just as a side note, Habitat families have a lower default rate than the average homeowner population in the United States. In other words, they are a better risk for a bank. Low-income families with Habitat are a better risk for a bank than, your average homeowner. The home is done. They move in. They are the homeowner. We provide them with a zero-interest 30-year mortgage. We determine what that monthly payment will be with them using a set of metrics. The important one is that we believe that no family should spend more than 30% of their income, their gross income on housing costs, whether it's taxes, mortgages, condo fees. And, you know, we know they have provided us with the information. We know what they earn using the 30% metric. We know what they can afford each month. That becomes the 30-year mortgage, and that's what we sell the home for. So they are paying for, they're paying what they can afford according to our criteria for the home that they're going to move into. We continue, we consider it a partnership. We stay involved with the families. We're there if they have difficulties. You know, things happen. Somebody gets sick. It happened during COVID. But we have this ongoing relationship with them. You know, they're wonderful people. They're a source of tremendous inspiration. We get many more applicants than we have homes. In Malden, we opened applications for 5 homes that are under construction. We're starting construction. We got 82 applications for 5 homes. So to me, that's an indicator of what a serious housing affordability issue, crisis we're in here in Boston. What else can I tell you? That's just kind of an overview on Habitat. Maybe I should take some questions if you have any.
Yeah, so I have a few to hopefully just frame the rest of the conversation. First of all, thank you for coming by.
Well, thank you for having me.
For the
Yeah.
conversations, and frankly, for the work that you do in
Well,
the
thank
region.
you.
I'm also in the housing, nonprofit
Sure,
space, and
yeah.
it's wonderful, and it's beautiful, and it's rewarding, but it can be a lot of hard work too.
Yes,
So thank you for
yeah.
what you do. So you mentioned that you don't have like government partnerships right now, you haven't received government funding, so when you have these programs like what you've done in Malden, what's the sourcing for this? Like how are you kind of picking the properties to purchase? And how
Oh,
are they,
okay.
Yeah, so how does that come about?
Thank you for
Yeah.
asking that question. We can't afford to buy land
Yeah.
in this market. It's
Right.
just out of the question. We rely on cities and towns to convey land to us at no cost, $1 or a deep, deep discount. We respond to RFPs that cities and towns put out, inviting proposals for publicly owned vacant land. We're competing with real estate developers, occasionally with other nonprofits, but largely real estate developers. And I'll tell you, in a lot of places, we don't get a break because we're Habitat for
Yeah.
Humanity. We've done well. We've had a good run. We currently have 36, and by the end of the summer, we'll have 42 homes in our pipeline. We rarely build single-family houses. We build multifamily, townhouses, duplexes. We do some rehab work. Most of what we do is new construction, but we have done and we continue to do rehab. We would be certainly open to doing more rehab. As I said, we fund what we do through philanthropic donations. I will mention that because we are, in effect, we're a bank. We're a bank, we're a builder, we're a real estate developer, a social service agency, all under one roof. And because of that, we have a portfolio of mortgages that we selectively sell to banks at a discount. It's a way we can generate capital. We're limited in our ability to do that, but that often supplements our financing. In order to build more, we will have to seek financial assistance from city, state, and even, federal government.
Yep.
So this is a new direction we'll be going in, but we need to do it. We simply can't rely on, charitable giving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so I think a few of my questions were already answered, like who owns the mortgage, and it's you.
Yep,
So that's
we
great.
do,
And I
yeah.
think as I think about what it might look like here, obviously, so as an affordable housing trust, we have the authority statutorily to purchase property,
Yes,
right? For
yeah.
purposes of affordable housing
Right.
development. And so in theory, you know, the opportunity exists to, whether it be through the tax title process, a
Right,
parcel that the
yeah.
city already owns, or through us purchasing, you know, property that's for sale that might need some work,
Yeah,
then, you know, from there, what would it look like? You know, what would the steps be then to loop you in? Would it be conveying the property, basically?
well, I'm assuming you would have to put out an RFP, right? And we would respond
Yeah.
and hope that we would get it. We know that you can't just give it to us
Right.
as much as we wish you could, but we would do that. We
Yep.
would, and I'm, you know, I'm
And then,
tipping my hand here, but
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
needed help writing the RFP, we could help you with that. Understanding, of course, is a risk that we won't get it,
sure,
but, you know.
sure. And then I think also too, we had talked about this a little bit privately, but just to kind of get it out in front of folks. So in terms of like how eligibility is set for participation in the program, what are the parameters? And is that affected by the funding source, or is that like a habitat policy, or how does that work?
What's a habitat policy, below 80% AMI? Now, I believe some funding sources have certain stipulations, but from my experience, they align with, you know, what we're trying to do. We are aiming, you know, for lower income families, lower than often, you know, like mass housing requires when they provide funding. So I don't think that's really an issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can say, the reason why I ask, and I think it's more kind of for our edification, is, you know, as I've talked about this with some of you guys and elected officials and things, you know, I think the desire is there to try to create opportunities for a range of income levels.
Yeah.
You know, so like extremely low, and then like low, and then also kind
Right,
of in the
yeah.
moderate range. And I think it would be, so if we were looking at something that like, that was at 100% AMI, that would be a separate track from what we might do with.
Yeah,
units,
that
basically. Yeah.
that is a higher, I mean,
Totally.
it's-
And I think also too, although I think the beauty of having this conversation is that the universe of possibilities increases when we think about the economies created by, you know, if we were to do an RFP process, if we were to get Habitat involved and had the opportunity to, you know, either a tax title property or something that we purchase at the type of, you know, level that Anaya mentioned, and have that conveyed, it's a huge cost savings relative to us doing the rehab work ourselves.
Sure,
And then also
yeah.
procuring a mortgage.
Yeah.
And administering that, to have a partner like Habitat do it. And so that would mean that potentially the cost of doing 3 units or whatever of 80% AMI or below dramatically decreases, you know, from what we
Sure,
otherwise would
yeah.
be conveying out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget, and that could free up money to then do a separate project that maybe is a moderate income, you know, project.
Yeah.
And that allows us to try to address a range of income levels. So I think that like, that's where you start having to count the pennies, you know, but then that's where the opportunities, like what Lorena mentioned, to apply for additional funding starts to make that, you know, more of a reality. So I think I've, you know, as I tend to do, I've talked too much. So I will be quiet and see if other folks have questions. I'm sure, and I know you do.
No, first of all, thank you so much for the presentation, and again, thank you for your work with.
Oh,
Habitat
of
for
course.
Humanity.
Thank you.
As we all share passion for making home ownership more affordable, and you're in the field doing the work, so thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah.
My question actually is to advance the conversation to discuss things like history of cooperation, collaborative efforts you've done. I know mentioned just now, Joseph was talking about ways to kind of commingle financial opportunities and things like that. For our edification or research, do you have anything to share with us that we can read for partnerships for
Well,
other
let's see,
trusts?
we're working in the town of Weston, believe it or not. You know, our service area goes way out into the suburbs, and we're working with the Weston Affordable Housing Trust. We work very closely with the City of Boston, with the Mayor's Office of Housing. We've been working with the City of Malden Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. You might be familiar with that project. And we are partnering with a community land trust in Chelsea, Comunidades Enraizadas. They're kind of an offshoot from Green Roots. You might be familiar with that organization. And we partnered to make a proposal to the city of Chelsea for a site where we would like to build 5 units for home ownership. We haven't yet been designated, but I probably shouldn't get ahead of myself, but I'm confident that we will. We're having some pretty involved discussions already with the city.
Sure, one of the interests that I have as a treasurer, besides just doing the financial accounting, is actually pursuing funding and fundraising
Yes.
opportunities, which is why I'm particularly curious as to the experience, the history. You mentioned Walden and is it Western?
Weston, yeah.
Malden and Comunidades de qué?
Comunidades Enraizadas. It's a
Enraizadas.
community land trust.
Okay.
Now, I probably haven't really answered your question, though. I realize that I think what you're asking is, have we had experience applying and seeking funding?
No, actually, I believe your experience is perfectly fine. The heart of my question is for us as a committee to
Yeah.
learn more about what you've done with other teams and
Yeah.
to see which that kind of can work with
I
what
see.
we're doing.
Yeah.
Right now, I think there's a great opportunity from what I'm listening for you, but what's incumbent upon me, if I'm going to be a part of the fundraising effort, is to become more fluent or aware of
Sure.
what has been done.
Yeah,
That way I
yeah.
can present it to Joe and the other team
Right,
members
right.
and say, hey, these are, not that we're going to go in that direction, but this is like a buffet of options for us to consider. And
Well, I'll give you one example. We just recently, there's a program through Mass Housing. It's called the Neighborhood Stabilization Fund. I don't know if you're familiar with it. We applied for funding for a project we're doing in Roslindale. I'm hoping we'll hear in a few weeks. It's competitive. I mean, we put a great package together. We had, half the elected officials in the city of Boston write letters in support. So,
Yeah, because the idea to get the ball rolling on this, on my
Yeah.
side, because it's a big, from our team.
Right.
I'm part of this. I'd like to get the ball rolling. Ideally, I'd like to present the committee
Yeah.
a list of considerable options for us to pursue.
Sure.
And, part of that you would be in that list.
yes,
And
yeah.
so, in addition to Lorraine's speech earlier and some others I can find on my own, ideally, I would like to condense, organize that, present it to
I see.
the group and say,
Right.
given the conversation that we've had in our public forums, and because we've got a lot of great information from you and from other
Sure,
speeches,
yeah.
but I think it would be value added for me to condense all of it and present it and say, okay, we've listened to all these opportunities
see.
over the last months or so.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
are some things that we can kind of here are some things I think we can do given whatnot. It would be incumbent upon me, is what I'm saying.
I
to
see,
Condense
yeah.
it into an intelligible form so that we can start to do things.
Yeah.
So that's really this brainchild of
Right,
what I'm
right.
talking about now.
Is this something we can work with you on
Absolutely.
offline?
I was gonna
Yeah.
suggest,
Yeah.
and I see Leila that you have a question, so I wanna get to you, virtually, and then Dean as well, so we'll go in that order, just because that's the order that I saw. But if you do have a build or, a project that's either ongoing or upcoming, and maybe we can do a site visit.
I would love to take you on a tour of our sites. We could do that. In addition, I could give you a presentation on our upcoming projects to show you, the architectural renderings of projects that will be, we'll be breaking ground in many of them in the summer. But we can certainly, we'd be very happy to, host you on a tour. Malden's a very, that would be an easy one. But
And
we
obviously
certainly
has
could take.
similarities to our community.
Yeah, but we could take you to some projects. Mission Hill, we have a project that's almost complete.
Terrific.
And we will be breaking ground, so
Yeah.
that's not much to look at,
Yeah.
at the beginning of construction, but
Well, it's good to see the process. And
Yeah,
so maybe
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
connect offline about some
Sure,
dates and
sure,
times that we can do
and,
that.
you know,
Yeah.
I would be very interested in introducing you to some of our staff, our
Yeah.
Director of Construction and Real Estate, our Director of Homeowner Services. Her team oversees, among other things, the selection of families, and she could talk about that in much more detail.
So Leila, I see that you've been patiently waiting, so I'm going to go to you and then go to Dean for further questions.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mr. James. Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
yeah, unfortunately, I don't see you this time, but I hope so next time I can meet with you. And okay, my question is about the, I don't know, the SEV housing. Is that one of the, you are related with this group? They working this program?
Which group is this?
SEV housing. Some of the affordable housing, for example, on Bridgewater, and they have also Melrose. They are working on some projects, and these companies involved. You don't know about it? They working with that? SEV?
No, I'm not familiar with them.
Okay, yeah, because they working with some affordable trust funds in another city. So
I see. Are you
I
talking
don't know.
about, I'm sorry, you're talking about 40B? Chapter 40?
No.
No? Okay.
No, not Chapter 40B. Is that agents that are working with sometimes on affordable trust fund with affordable trust fund.
I
So
see.
I will, yeah, but I know
And
you
what,
don't work with them.
yeah,
On Bridgewater and Melrose too.
I see.
And
And what do they do
yeah.
exactly?
They help with all the information for the people that are gonna be, all related with affordable trust fund.
I see.
No,
I would
yeah,
love to
so,
learn more and meet them, if you
I
think
think
that
yeah,
would be
okay.
I
useful.
think they do 40B. I've been reading about them at work. I think they work to make certain communities compliant.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I'd love to learn more about them. We just did a friendly 40B project in Weston. So it was our first 40B. Most of what we do is in urban areas. So it would, the 40B process is certainly different than in urban areas. Just out of curiosity, is Revere, are you subject to 40B? Are you?
No, we are on the process.
That's,
We start our affordable trust fund.
You're under 10%?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you are? Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you're definitely vulnerable.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, frankly, part of, I think, what we're trying to accomplish,
Yeah,
and we're only a piece of it with the trust fund, but, creating opportunities to help get us to
to
level of
10%,
compliance,
yeah.
but do it in a way that is,
Yeah.
community oriented, that
Right.
gets folks on board and tries to build
Yeah,
collaboration.
yeah. Well, that's very
you know.
similar to the town of Weston.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
Weston, I think, is-
they've been
yeah.
battered by 40B projects, and, they see what we do as a way, they have a long way to go, but
Right.
to get to 10%, in a way that, at a scale that.
Yeah, that people are comfortable with,
They're comfortable with, yeah.
And
yeah.
also, I
And
mean, it's-
homeownership
yeah.
too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think rental housing's important, but I think homeownership is much more palatable in many communities.
Sure, and I think
yeah.
effective strategies involve a mix, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that,
I agree.
yeah, and I think that just the nature of it, home ownership opportunities, you need a partner like someone like
Sure,
Habitat,
yeah,
where
yeah.
realistically, a developer is probably not going to build, a lot of home ownership opportunities
No.
for low income, the subsidy isn't there to
No,
make that
no,
pencil.
it just doesn't
Yeah.
work for
And
most
so I think
developers.
that, if the goal is to help get to that 10% through including kind of smaller scale homeownership opportunities,
Sure.
it requires building these types of partnerships, so I'm
Well,
glad that
if
that
we
came
can
up.
help you to get to that 10%, we would be we'd be
Yeah.
delighted.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things,
Yeah.
and I think everyone here gets this, but, you know, the law is a law,
Yeah.
right? So, like, you have to be compliant with state law, and the question is, does the city and its entities want to steer that process of being in compliance with state law, or do we want that process to be steered for us? You know, those are the two
Yeah,
options.
yeah, that's
Option three
well
of trying
put.
to ignore it is not, you're
Yeah.
not gonna succeed with that. You
Right,
know, and I
right,
think that's
yeah.
an important thing to keep in mind. Did you have, I know that you had some further questions, yeah.
Jim, thank you for coming. I did see your Malden project on the.
Oh, you did?
Malden Catholic website had some
Oh,
volunteers
good, yeah,
down there,
yeah,
and
they've
that-
been great. The Malden Catholic kids have been coming out on a regular basis, yeah.
And there's a number of Revere kids that go there, so I'm sure if we did something here, they'd be jumping
Oh,
on board
great,
here as
great,
well.
yeah.
A couple questions. So I see this as kind of parallels, right? So I think what we had talked about was initial investments, would there be some sort of a return back to us so we could perpetually fund new developments down the road?
Yeah,
Is there a way, so we would, let's say, have an RFP for our funds?
Yeah.
Habitat wins the RFP.
right.
You get the funds, what happens afterwards? Is there any return coming this way, or is it more of a gift?
Well, to be honest, you know, if you sold the land at market value, there'd be a return. We couldn't do it, though. If, we would need, I mean, I'll be very honest with you, financially, we're not in a place where we can be, you know, putting a bid on the property. We'd need to get the land for $1, or the property for $1, yeah.
And I think that's why I think, as we think about our strategy, a mix, you know,
Yeah.
where we'd want to look at perhaps something, you know, this might be more of a fit for the tax title properties, and then the properties that we may see as being for sale at a modest price might be more of a fit for, we figure out a way to do that process ourselves and have it be at a sale price that we get back, you know, a certain amount. This tax title would mean that we wouldn't have to, you know, pay the market rate to bring
Yeah.
it in.
And so I do like the fact that, you know, because of your business model, you do have to target that 60 to 80% of the AMI
Yeah.
in order to get some return on it, because if they go at the 0 or the 10%, then
Yeah.
there is no mortgage that low
Right.
that you're gonna get that money back, so you can do your building again.
Yeah, yeah.
But where as a community it helps, I'm the executive director for the Revere Housing Authority.
Oh,
So-
great.
So our
Yeah.
constituents,
Yeah.
our residents, for the most part, fall under that, under 30%, that very low.
Yes, yeah.
But if you create opportunities in the city where people can then move, you know, we
Sure.
have plenty of working families that
Yeah.
would love to be able to afford a 60, 80%.
That would be
rate.
ideal, yeah.
They move into
Right.
those units, and then we'd backfill.
Sure.
With those people in need, so even
Yeah.
if it does fall into that 60, 80% all the time, we do help the community because there'll be more opportunity.
Right.
For people at that
Sure,
lower
sure.
level.
Yeah.
Are there any requirements, and this is just for continued working requirements after your homeowners?
No,
buy
they,
it?
they own the house, they
It's
pay their
owned now.
mortgage, we're there to help, you know,
Sure.
if things come up, but no, there are no, additional working requirements, yeah.
And-
The 300 hours, that's their down payment in effect, the sweat equity, yeah.
That's 7, 8 weeks at 40 hours a week, so they're.
It's a lot of work.
They're earning it.
These families are impressive, I have to say, yeah. But there is no continuing work requirement, you know.
Just the requirement that they would pay the mortgage.
Right, that's right,
obviously,
yeah,
which, you know,
yeah,
so that would
exactly.
imply a certain amount of income would have to
Right,
come in.
right.
Yeah.
And then that home would continue to be in the affordable housing market, because I'm sure there's a deed restriction on it then, right?
That's right. If the city chooses to put a deed restriction, which I'll tell you, most of what we build, because it's on, you know, municipally owned land, or land that was owned by the municipal government, almost always, the government's put a deed restriction. So it would stay, well, at least for a period of time, I don't know, 30 years is, that's a kind of a common time. Sometimes it's in perpetuity, but that would be your call, you know, as the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we can work with whatever whatever deed restriction you put on it, yeah, yeah. But, There's one, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but I do want to mention, this is kind of off topic a little bit. We have been investigating what are called critical repair aging in place programs, where we, and many Habitat affiliates do this, where we help lower income homeowners, especially the elderly. We upgrade and make repairs to the home so that they can live in the home and stay in the community much longer. There's a big need for this. We don't currently do it. It's something that we're exploring. I mean, it's all funding dependent. And I know at the last meeting, I can't recall the woman's name, but she had mentioned that there might be, I don't know, I don't think it was you, but I think it was your department, where they expressed some interest in this idea of, through CDBG funding, working with us to do a, kind of a pilot aging in place program here in Revere. So I'm not sure this falls under the purview of the Affordable Housing Trust, but I do want to.
It might, I think CDBG is probably a better fit.
Yeah.
But I also think that we should explore, and I'd like to be in, conversations with Tom, where the possibility certainly exists that something like that could be funded out of the trust. And we would be involved in the process of soliciting applications, and I assume that your screening and lottery process would work the way it does for the.
We have, we have so many families, so many more families than we have homes to put them in. We unfortunately, we have to resort to a lottery.
Right, and I assume that's like Mass Housing's certified process and all that.
That's right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We of course have to be we obviously have to follow fair housing law, and we work with Mass Housing and DHCD on that. Yeah.
Any additional questions for Jim? Well, this has been incredibly helpful, and I think as far as next steps, definitely let's look into a site visit, a chance to visit. I think on the aging in place piece, let's make sure that you're having a conversation with
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Tom, and I'd like to be in on that just to see where Affordable Housing Trust can
would be
swing
great.
in to be of assistance.
Yeah, great.
And then I think, and this is maybe a Lorena ask, once we have a better sense of timeline on tax title, this is up to the board, but I think I'm just saying, from my seat, my gut tells me that the Habitat partnership is best fit with the possibility to get tax title properties conveyed to the trust, and then the trust could put out the RFP that would fit, an opportunity like Habitat, and that would allow us to have much less of a financial outlay, so that it's not a problem that we wouldn't get any return on it, and we could focus our larger kind of outlays on maybe a moderate income program that allows us to get a little bit of return back. So I think that's where I'm thinking, and this is obviously something that we can deliberate and discuss, as a board moving forward.
So Joe, I'll wait to hear from you then, on both on the site visit, on any offline meetings that you might like to have. We're available.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your time.
Oh, sure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good.
All right. And I just want to make sure anyone on Zoom, any questions, comments before we let Jim go? All right, well, seeing none.
Okay, thank you very much.
So one other piece that we had on the agenda was, and thank you so much. Was Layla and Jan, just to check in, I know that we had some mission statement text that we talked through a few months ago, and I know that, I think Jan was out for a meeting, and now that we have you both here, I just wanted to check in and see if you had further, anything further to share on that.
Okay, I can talk about it. Okay, I make a research related with the project-based rental assistance for the low-income housing tax credit. So that's I don't know if I can talk in more deep right now, but what is the federal programs that we can help our affordable trust in our city. And this is that we can include it on the goals on our trust
Hang
fund.
on,
Say that again?
sorry. I was trying to open one window and another one opened. All right, closed it.
What is it?
Okay, so I think, you know, I know that you guys had some text that we were working off of before, and so maybe we can circulate that again before the next meeting, and then, you know, just try to formalize that so that we can get it on the website. That would be terrific.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
I will pull up what I've been working on and I will send it to everyone. It is very short. It's only about 6 or 7 sentences. I keep looking at it and wanting it to be longer and telling myself it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I think short is good. You know, I think,
Okay, that makes me feel much better.
yeah, I think the goal should be, it's about sort of a statement of values and vision rather than a list of specifics of what we're trying to accomplish, you know, and I think that if we stick to that idea, keep it concise, you know, it's something, it's a way to explain to people what it is that we do in, you know, the proverbial elevator pitch, so.
and also included
Yeah.
your goals. Your goals are great too. The goals that you share, your
Terrific. All right. Any other thoughts or comments on the mission statement? All right, well, seeing none, we also just have room here for any late items, you know, things that folks did not have a chance to submit in time for the agenda, so if anyone has anything. And then also public comment, if anyone wants to just make open comments. So this is the time for that, either if anyone's present or if you're on Zoom. All right then, seeing none, we somehow managed to make this an exactly 1 hour meeting, which is incredibly impressive. I don't know if we somehow managed to do that on purpose, but either way, great work, everyone. And with that, I will say that we are recessed and we'll be back the second Wednesday of June.
Thank you, Joe.
okay.
All right.
Okay, have a good